physics in particular that I have been exposed to is that there are many unanswered beyond the current capacity of science to explain some of the things that they are seeing, not to even mention the things that are not yet being seen in there. And when you look inside the atom, I'm suggesting it gives a template for understanding what's going on in the world. You see, the atom is inside everything, or virtually everything. We know that there's a particle which is smaller called a quark. But to keep it simple, the atom is inside everything. It's in the air. It's in the land. It's in water. And they're in their billions and billions and billions. And one of the things that we know is that, and we know this because our enemy have done so many wicked and bad things with it, every single atom is capable of making a nuclear explosion. And if you can imagine that we are made up of billions of atoms, and every single one of them is capable of creating a nuclear explosion. And can you imagine that none of them actually do it? That the creation of the universe is so great that we don't explode. That instead of exploding when the atom, when the opposing forces in the atom, when they disagree with each other to the point where there could be a nuclear explosion, they rather change their form. They would rather change their form than create a nuclear explosion, something which is called categorical conversion in the scientific community. So if we can understand the atom, we understand the universe that we're living in greater depth. So for instance, how is a nuclear explosion created? A nuclear explosion is created when an external particle is fired into the atom. And when it goes into the atom, it disrupts the forces of the atom. There are some forces which are pulling inwards, holding the atom together. There are other forces which are pushing outwards. The forces, incidentally, which make the nuclear explosion. But the inward forces are so strong that they hold the atom together, despite the fact that there are nuclear scale forces trying to get away from the atom. And when scientists decide to make a nuclear explosion, what they do is they fire a particle at high speed into a single atom. And then what happens is it disrupts the forces that's holding the atom together. It weakens them, even if it's just temporarily. And as those forces become weakened, the expansion forces of the atom are released at nuclear scale. So quantum physics is also nuclear physics. It's the same thing. And that nuclear scale release of forces is the nuclear explosion. The same explosion that goes into the making of nuclear bombs. The same caliber of explosion that sometimes happens in in the stars, etc., etc. And what I'm suggesting is that our children must have a thorough understanding of that area of science and unmask that area of science, because as Garvey told us, those who master science will be the leaders of humanity. And let's be clear that we are producing young people who are brilliant scientifically, brilliant scientifically. But their scientific achievements do not necessarily go towards the advancement of Africa. Their scientific achievements are very often brought up by our imperialist enemy. And so we have to arrange ourselves in a manner to make sure that the genius of our children remains with us. The next point I'm suggesting is that African children should have complete mastery of the languages and techniques of efficient and effective communication. Yes, that's at the interpersonal level, but it's also at the mass level. So it's at the one-to-one communication level, but it's also at the mass level of mass media. And I'm also suggesting that African children should have complete mastery of managing our continent and the world for the greater good of humanity and Mother Nature. Now, continuing with the points, I'll go through the points, and if the points jog anybody, please feel free to ring in and comment on them, and please feel free to disagree with them if that's the case. So the next point is the production of ever higher and better technology, i.e. tools in service of and in harmony with the best interest of humanity and Mother Nature, symbolized by an ever cleaner planet, in turn symbolized by the ability to produce and reproduce an abundance of the purest and freshest air, the purest and cleanest water. So we come back to our sister's point that she made when she rang in. The most robust travel vehicles facilitating the movement of African people through the universe at speeds faster than the speed of light. The most efficient and effective long and short distance communication tools. I go on to say here that we also want to live in a world where we fully deploy the creative genius of African people to produce all that we need and surplus so effectively, efficiently, and speedily that we create more time for us to respectfully engage with each other, Mother Nature and our ancestors. And the final point in that first section, that's the economic section, is that we live in a world where we have the most advanced technologies, where the most advanced technologies flourish in service of African people as part of greater humanity and Mother Nature. So at the heart of economics is the idea of production, and these are an attempt to look at the realities of economics from the point of view of nature, the relationship between people and nature being economics, our engagement with nature, and what we produce out of nature. But now I'm going to move on to the political level. Incidentally, if you have any comments that you want to make on any of those things that I've said, if you have other suggestions, feel free to come forward and share those suggestions. The number for interaction is 079 444 313 66. That's 079 444 313 66. And so the next level, moving up beyond beyond the economic is is the political. Politics drives economics. Politics is the thinking part of economics. Politics is actually a part of economics. It's the relationship between people. It's the thinking part of economics. Politics is to economics what the brain is to the body. So politics drives economics. And if we understand that, we understand the importance of getting our thinking right in order to get our actions correct. And so politics is the process of us collectively getting our thinking right in order to correctly drive our economic actions. And so the heading that I've given politics here is driven by our capacity to govern a just society for African people. And the points made underneath this is, I want every African person on earth to understand that the most effective method for governing our homeland and people at this point in history means the following things. 1, Africa, including her surrounding islands, must be united and governed as one continental-wide superstate, freed from all internal national borders. So I'll be very clear. These entities that we think of as nations inside Africa, they have to go. We are African people. The border between Ghana and Togo, for instance, has to go. You know, the border between Zimbabwe and Tanzania, for instance, has to go. You know, Kenya and Uganda, for instance, has to go. Definitely Senegal and Gambia has to go. All of those borders, they must go. They are meaningless in the African context, and they were imposed upon us at the Berlin Conference in 1884, 1885. And in order to have a properly united Africa, we must dislodge these borders, we must dislodge these fake nations that we've been taught to have an affinity to. And we must unite as one continental-wide Africa. Secondly, the superstate must be created by and under the collective control of all African people, those at home and those abroad, and predominantly managed by women. So the first point being made is that Africa belongs to all African people. Of course it belongs to African people who are at home, who are the primary custodians of our African land. Of course it belongs to that section of the African world. It also belongs to those Africans who were taken out of Africa or for other reasons find themselves to be outside of Africa. And so we must unite as people, not only across the borders that exist in Africa, not only across tribal differences, but also across oceans, so that we include in the governance of Africa African people who, for whatever reason, find themselves outside the immediate land of Africa. Africa belongs to all of us. And the final rider there is that it must be governed predominantly by women, and certainly this is going to be necessary in the initial phases. We live in a sexist world. We live in a patriarchal world. And part of bringing Africa back on balance will involve bringing back the woman to her position of prominence, bringing African women into their role as managers of the state, so that they will have at least equal. They will be at least equal in number to men, and probably more so than men, in the governance of Africa, so that they will be fully represented. You know, in African tradition, one of the things that we do is we don't. Our men traditionally were not allowed to just go off to war and get themselves killed in wars without first consulting with the women who have to bear the pain of their loss, the women who have to bring up the families, without the men who have been killed, in wars. And so something as important as going to war needed the authority of women, needed to be sanctified by women before it could happen. My suggestion is that something as important as the governance of our nation, of our continent, needs to be authorized by African women, needs to be sanctified by African women. The next point: the land and resources of Africa must come under the exclusive sovereign control of African people at home and abroad collectively, and used for the benefit of all African people in the first instance, making us the richest, most powerful people and humble leaders of the world for the greater good of humanity. At this point in history, our resources are basically being stolen. They've been stolen by all and sundry. Everybody's coming to Africa to see what they can get. You know, every other nation seems to have a hand in Africa. The only people with a legitimate claim to Africa, of course, are African people. And we're the only ones that don't control it. So we must gain control of Africa to bring this world back on balance. And when we get control of Africa, because Africa is by far the richest, by far the richest land in the world, we become the most powerful people in the world. If we look at the world carefully, we see that for a long time, Europe has been the strongest. And by Europe, I include US Satan, which is a child of Europe, built on the genocide of the American Indians, and Australia too, which is a child of Europe, built on the genocide of the Aboriginal people there. Yeah? Those people have for a long time been the most powerful people in the world. Now, in order to be a superpower, you must have a stake in Africa. That's how wealthy Africa actually is. Now, China wants to be a superpower. Where do you find China? In Africa, because that's where, you know, the bulk of the wealth of the world is. Russia has just had a summit. There was the Russia-Africa Forum Summit, which finished just last week, actually. Russia is in there building herself back up by going into Africa. The Arabian countries, believe it or not, have got land assigned for themselves. They've made dodgy deals and assigned for themselves land in Africa to grow their food. So that the food that's grown on the land doesn't go to African people, it just goes straight out of Africa to Arabia. If you want to be powerful, you have to go to Africa. India and Pakistan do not have the natural resources to make nuclear weapons, but they have nuclear weapons. How did they get them? Well, it's dodgy deals with African neo-colonial leaders. The uranium from the soil of Africa is what they did the dodgy deals around in order to get the ingredients necessary for them to have nuclear weapons. And in the same way that other peoples are becoming powerful because they have a stake in Africa, African people, when we take our proper and rightful control of Africa, will become the most powerful people in the world. We will not use our power arrogantly. We will not use our power to destroy others. We will defend ourselves, but we will not use our power to destroy others. If they seek to seek destruction, there's nothing we can do about that. But we will not use our power to destroy others. But our job is to take control of that land. And when we do, we become the most powerful people in the world. The next point I've got here is we must develop a military capability sufficient to defend our homeland from any foe. Any foe. So Nkrumah called it the Africa High Command. And the irony is that because we have so far failed to implement Nkrumah's plan of an African continental army to defend ourselves, other people are doing it. So we have what is a crazy situation where US Satan now have what they call AFRICOM. So they have brought their high command to take charge of Africa on their behalf because we haven't taken charge of Africa militarily on ours. If you go to parts of Africa, Sudan is one of them, for instance. The Chinese actually have a military presence on our soil. This is madness. US Satan having a military presence on our soil. China having a military presence on our soil. This is madness. Now, recently it's been agreed that Russia will have a military presence on our soil. These are the ingredients for World War III that are going on here. Why is this happening? Because of the vacuum of our activity. No foreign nation should have soldiers on our soil. It should be African soldiers and organized African soldiers and African soldiers only on our soil. When a nation from outside is able to put soldiers on your soil in numbers, it is a sign that they are in charge of you. That's essentially what it means. So when you see foreign soldiers having bases on our soil, it is an admission that they are in charge of us, that they can actually fight us from within our own soil when they're ready and destroy us from within. This is absolute madness. The neo-colonial leadership of Africa have let us all down by allowing these bases to be on our soil. So that point was, we must develop a military capability sufficient to defend our homeland from any foe. The next point is, our continental-wide supernation state, the most powerful in the world, must be constantly ready, willing, and able to protect any and all of her children wherever they are based in the world, whether at home or abroad. One of the great problems that we have at the moment is these jigsaw puzzle states that we have in Africa. They don't defend even their own people. And when I say their own people, I mean the people inside their little borders, at home or abroad. So our people can be abused on the Mediterranean. What are these little states doing? I mean, do we know whether the drownings that are happening in the Mediterranean are happening deliberately? Do we know whether the European navies are actually drowning the migrants on purpose in order to prevent them from getting into Europe? Do we know? We don't even have, in these so-called nations, inquiries happening. They're not even making diplomatic noises in defense of their own, and by own I mean the people, African people within their borders. It really is a disgrace. that our people want to run away from the richest continent in the world, whilst others are running towards the richest continent in the world. And that is a political question. It's an issue of poor governance on our part. The final point I've got under governance here is that our continental-wide supernation state is a means to a greater end. It is tasked with laying the foundation for a continent and by extension a world so supportive and in tune with the best interests of the people, Mother Nature and our ancestors, where truth, freedom, justice and peace are so inculcated into human existence that all states become unnecessary, are removed from the world and become relics of history. Ultimately, the world will rid itself of states. States are a mechanism of oppression. Under the capitalist system, the state is used to oppress the majority populations. So it's used by an elite group to oppress the others. Under a socialist system, the state still has an oppressive role, but its role is reversed. It's used to keep the elite few that were holding everybody down in order. Because if you don't keep them in order, they'll come back again and use the state to hold everybody down. So the state has a different role, but it still has an oppressive role. It's just that eventually people's, that elite group which have held so much power in the past are subdued. And then they begin to see that the world is a better place for them when they are not the elite group. They start to notice. And it's a bit like, for instance, if you imagine that in English history you had the lords, and the Lord of Lords was the king. That's the landlords, etc. These lords, living in their time, they were the Dungargon of their time. But if you bring the lords, those same lords, into this phase of history, they'd be amazed. Those lords don't know anything about central heating, things that we take for granted now. Those lords don't know anything about electricity and having light at night. Even the poverty-stricken worker in this period of history is, in many respects, better off than the lords of that time, the Dungargons of that time. And what will happen is eventually, as we move beyond capitalism into a socialist system, what will happen is people will begin to realize, even the elite group themselves will begin to realize that they are better, they're actually better off, now that capitalism is gone. And they will begin to support socialism. It may take generations, but it will happen. And when we all understand that socialism is a superior form of living to capitalism, we will then want to rid ourselves even of socialism by removing the state. And when you remove the state from socialism, you enter a new phase of history, and that new phase of history is called communism. So that's just a kind of brief explanation of some of these terms which are often misused. But we want to, be in tune with Mother Nature as a fundamental element of our politics. Now, moving on to the next level. The next level is the ideological level. So my first set of points related to the economic level. The second set of points related to the political level. And this third set of points that I've got here, this third set of points will relate to the ideological level. And just to break that down a little, just to say that The economic level, economics in essence is the relationship between people and nature. That's what economics boils down to, how people engage nature. The political level is the relationship between people, how people relate and engage other people. That's the essence of politics and economics. And those are the qualitative elements of society. Sorry, the quantitative elements of society. As we move now into ideology, we've come to the qualitative elements. Your ideology rests on your politics. That's what it actually rests on. And it deals with the qualitative element, how we treat other people, the manner in which we treat other people is the essence of our ideology. Do we treat them well or do we treat them badly? Do we treat them with respect or disrespect? Do we love them or do we kill them? You know, our ideology in its expression comes out in how we treat other people. And the heading that I've given the ideological section is driven by our capacity to build respectful relationships for the achievement of happiness. And I write here, I want every African person on earth to understand, adopt, and apply in the modern world the principles underpinning the tendency towards healthy relationships found typically in African village culture. Namely, point number one, human beings are fundamentally humble and respectful of other human beings, Mother Nature, and their ancestors. Two, every human being is more important than property, money, or profit, and therefore an end in their own right, not a means to somebody else's end. Three, the benefits to the we are usually, but not always, prioritized over the benefits to the me. And when the benefits to the me are given higher priority, that is decided by the we. And I'm not sure, I need to get used to the phones here. I'm not sure if people are trying to come through. I'm hearing some activity on the phones. And I hope that I haven't been missing your calls. I apologize. It may be that I've been missing people's calls. It looks as though people have been ringing in. So I really do apologize if you've been ringing in and I haven't answered the phone. I'm getting used to the equipment, and let me give out the number again, just in case, actually, just in case. The number for interaction is 079 31366. That's 079 31366. That's the number for interaction. It's a WhatsApp number as well as a cell phone number. So you can ring in via WhatsApp. You can ring in via the normal line, and that will allow you to participate. Remember, in today's program, what we're talking about is what is your vision for Africa. Our sister who rang in talked about the importance of water. And what I'm doing, just to give people a sense of what's going on here, is I am sharing my vision. My vision is outlined in the book Pan-Africanism from Program to Philosophy, an outlook on liberation. So I'm sharing my vision, and my vision is based on it's built on 4 different levels. It's built on the economic level, it's built on the political level, which is above the economic level, and now we're moving on to the ideological level, and the top level that we'll finish on will be the philosophical level. So I've given some expression to politics, my political vision, my economic vision and my political vision. Now I'm going to give some expression to my ideological vision. And incidentally, you are free to ring in and disagree with anything that I've said, agree with anything that I've said, add to anything that I've said, and generally just contribute to the discussion. Please feel free to do so. So, driven by our capacity, the heading for the ideological section is driven by our capacity to build respectful relationships for the achievement of happiness. I want every African person on earth to understand, adopt, and apply in the modern world the principles underpinning the tendency towards healthy relationships found typically in African village culture. Namely, and the first one, that human beings are fundamentally humble and respectful of other human beings, Mother Nature, and their ancestors. Every human being is more important than property, money, or profit, and therefore an end in their own right, not a means to somebody else's end. The benefits to the we are usually, but not always, prioritized over the benefits to the me. And when the benefits to the me are given higher priority, that is decided by the we. And whilst all human beings are unique, have different qualities, attributes, we are all equal in essence. So those are the points that I've put forward at the ideological level. Another way to look at that is to say that at the level of principle, humanism is what we go for, and exploitation is what we reject. That's one way of expressing it. That valuing people above material things, above money, etc., is where we stand. That's part of what makes us, humanists. On another of the principles, the idea that the collective is superior to the individual. Sekou Touré, the great Sekou Touré, former, the first president of independent Guinea, made a point of emphasizing that the collective is superior to the individual. And we know this to be true. We know that this is just a straightforward fact by examining nature. Because we know that no individual can create a collective. It's impossible for an individual to create a collective. But we know that a collective can create an individual. In other words, as an individual, I was created by my mother and father in that biological sense. I am incapable of creating another individual without the assistance of somebody else. And I'm not unique here. This applies to all of us. When you put the right woman and man together in combination, they can produce a human being. That collective can produce an individual. But no individual is capable of producing a collective. So even at the biological level, just scientifically, we can prove that the collective is superior to the individual. Now, that's not to say now, let's be very clear, that's not to say that the individual is unimportant. That's not the point that's being made here. Individuals are critically important. Our humanism reminds us of the importance of people. Every individual is of critical importance. But having established that you can't have a collective without individuals, and you can't have individuals without a collective. Having established that, the question really becomes, which comes first? Which is superior? And of course, the collective comes first because the collective creates the individual. and of course, the third of those principles relates to superiority and inferiority. It's elitism on the one hand versus egalitarian on the other. Elitism, this notion that one person is superior to others, is the essence of elitism. You know, racism is elitism of an ethnic kind, if I can put it that way. Yeah. Sexism is elitism of a sex and gender kind, if I can put it that way. Classism is elitism around the ownership of property. These are all things that, as African people, we reject. And we take the position in African culture that all human beings are equal in essence. This is very important to understand, that all human beings are equal in essence. Now, it really doesn't matter that some of us have bigger feet than others, or that some of us can run faster than others. Usain Bolt, the fastest runner of all time, is not superior to other human beings. He's very special in what he's achieved. But he's not more important. He's not superior to a disabled child in a wheelchair. Our human essence is equal. So regardless of our abilities, regardless of our disabilities, we are equal in essence. And these are the ideological principles that I'm suggesting be at the heart of a future Africa. Remember, the question that I'm addressing here is, what is your vision for Africa? And I'm sharing my vision for Africa. And that was the ideological element of the vision. Now, the fourth and final section of the vision that I've got here relates to the philosophical, the highest of the levels. And recognizing that our ideology is built on our politics. Politics is the relationship between people, and ideology is the quality of the relationship between people. Well, economics is the relationship between people and nature, and philosophy is the quality of the relationship between people and nature. That's the essence of what philosophy actually is. Now, bearing that in mind, what I've suggested here is a title for the philosophical element, which reads, "Driven by a humble and respectful relationship with our environment for the achievement of higher understanding." So this is really the highest level. And the points that I have here are as follows. I want every African person on earth to understand that, and I've listed some points. Mother Nature is composed of antagonistic opposites held in unison. And some people will know this as dialectics. Let me say warmest greetings to you, sister or brother. You are live on Blessed Radio. How would you like to contribute to the discussion? Right, I think I may owe an apology there. Somebody did try to ring through. I'm going to ask you to please ring back. It may be the way that I'm interacting with the phone that's causing the problem. So if you are able to hear me, please please ring in. You rang in on the other phone. That number is 0203 290 1138. Please feel free to ring in and interact on that number also. It was my error why you didn't get through. Let me make sure I can get this right now. Just bear with me, I'm doing my best to... warmest greeting. Unfortunately, the call has been missed again. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I haven't answered the phone correctly, and I really do sincerely apologize to that caller. If you bear with me and if you're ringing again, your contribution is genuinely welcome here on the program. So we'd be delighted for you to ring in and make your contribution. We'll get over the gremlins, don't worry. We'll get over the gremlins and we'll sort it out. Yeah. In the meantime, whilst you make up your mind, let me just give out the other number again, just in case it's needed. That's 0203 290 1138. That's 0203 290 1138. If you ring in on that number, you would also be able to come live here in the studio. So going back to the philosophical now, driven by a humble respect for relationships with our environment, for the achievement of higher understanding, that was the heading. I want every African person on earth to understand that, 1, Mother Nature is composed of antagonistic opposites held in unison. That was the point around what, if we take time to study it, we'll call dialectics. That there are antagonistic opposites in everything. Where there is light, there will be dark. Where there is positive, there will be negative. Electricity requires the interplay, the relationship between the positive and the negative. So where there is energy, there will be positive and negative energy. And this is so everywhere on earth, and African culture, of course, supports this. Number 2, the never-ending engagement of opposites is the source of perpetual change in Mother Nature and everything in her. So this is to understand some of the internal elements of dialectics, that the positive and the negative, as they interact with each other, create change. So when the positive and the negative in electricity come together, it creates light, for instance, if connected correctly to a light bulb. It makes our phones work correctly. It makes our computers work correctly. In a car, it makes the engine move. The coming together of the positive and negative is what creates change. Point number 3, Mother Nature was there before us and gave us space within her. And this helps us to understand our position so that we don't become arrogant. We are but specks in nature. Just as we can hardly see the atom because it's so much smaller than us. It's a wonder if nature possibly can hardly see us because we are so small within her. So, Mother Nature was there before us. It's humbling for us to understand that. Of course, in African culture, we do understand that. Point number 4, that we are a part of Mother Nature. That it's not possible to exist outside nature. We are a part of nature. And in respecting nature, we respect ourselves. In respecting ourselves, we respect nature. Point number 5, we are absolutely obliged to engage with Mother Nature. Absolutely obliged. We must breathe. We must drink. We must eat. We really must interact with fellow African people who are part of Mother Nature as well. and non-Africans too. So just by being alive, we engage with nature. There's no avoiding it. And so understanding that is part of our humbling experience. Point number 6, that spirit is inside Mother Nature. If we understand that nature is everywhere and always, if we understand that, then we understand that spirit is actually inside Mother Nature. It's actually a part of Mother Nature in much the same way as material is inside Mother Nature and part of Mother Nature. And the final of the points that I've got here is that spirituality, that's number 7, spirituality is the process of connecting with spirit achievable only through a respectful engagement with Mother Nature. So the agreement, an acceptance of that vision is something that we're seeking from people who are serious about organizing for the liberation of Africa. The building upon that vision, the improvement of that vision is something that we are seeking to build upon for the building of effective organization. Again, I want to apologize because I did not, I think somebody tried to ring through on more than one occasion and was unsuccessful. Let me say to you that you continue to be welcome to ring in and make your contribution. I'll give out both numbers just in case. So the number I think that you were ringing in on was, somebody was ringing on this number just now, was 0203 290 1138. So 0203 290 1138. And the number that somebody was ringing in on earlier, which is the actual studio number, that's the Bless Radio studio number, was 079 444 313 66. That's 079 444 313 66. So we're moving in now to the last few minutes of the program. With the 10 or so minutes that we have left, that means that you've got an opportunity to ring in quickly if you want to. Let me just make some comments on the future prospects of Africa. I have to say that I am excited. I am actually excited by the prospective future of Africa. And in order to understand my excitement, we need to look at the people of Africa. It's in the demographics. Africa has approximately 1.3 billion people in the motherland. So there are approximately 1.3 billion African people on the African motherland. There are approximately, 300 to 400 million African people in the diaspora. So let's put those together and say, let's say that we've got approximately 1.6 billion African people on the planet Earth. This is a very important figure, very impressive figure as well. Now, if we go back 100 years to the time of Marcus Garvey, Marcus Garvey was informing us that we had 400 million African people in the world. 400 million. So in 100 years, we have quadrupled in number. Very important to understand that. Now, what makes that even more impressive, is the fact that there has been a campaign during that period, during that last 100 years, and before that, a genocidal campaign of slaughter launched against African people. They've tried every which way they can to wipe us from the face of the earth. And every plan that they've come up with so far has failed. The African woman and the African man have retained the ability to come together and reproduce. And whilst we don't want to lose any African life, every African life is precious. When we pan it out to the collective, despite the fact that we've been, attacked via AIDS, despite the fact that we've been attacked via Ebola, despite the fact that we've been attacked via proxy wars with millions of our people losing their lives in places like the Congo, in places like the Sudan, in places like Sierra Leone, in places like Ethiopia, in places like Uganda. There have been so many wars across our continent in the past 20 or 30 years that have cost literally millions of lives. The Congo, we're talking about between 5 and 10 million people. Some figures even go higher than that, of number of people that have lost their lives in the Congo. Despite all of that, despite the attempts to sterilize our women, and our men too, despite all of these campaigns that imperialism has had to try to cull us, to reduce our numbers, to wipe us even from the face of the earth, we have multiplied fourfold in the last 100 years. This is a massive success. And we must understand what this means. Because look, the enemy builds nuclear weapons, they do all kinds of things. They are good at mass killing. They've had 2 world wars. They know how to kill en masse. And they've been using all of their expertise to try to wipe us out, and we continue to multiply. And the central lesson that comes from that, and it's not a boast, it's not arrogance, it's the lesson that we African people are invincible. That even when there is a campaign, an organized genocidal campaign to wipe us from the face of the earth, we continue to multiply. This is the most terrifying thing for the enemy of the African people, to realize that with all of their worst efforts, with all of their dastardly deeds, they cannot prevent us from multiplying. This is important. This is important. So if we understand that we are invincible, that we are here for the future, our task then is to work on the qualitative area to improve our lot in this world. Let me just say a little bit more on the quantitative. The average age of African people in the world right now, or in the continent right now, is 18, 1-8. Compare that to Europe, which is about 42, old people. Europe is dying off. US Satan is up there in the 30s. US Satan, North America and all that lot are dying off. They're much older. Now we have an average age of 18, partly because of all these wars that were happening where the adults were killed and the children came together. Now, let me see if I can. Warmest greetings to you, sister or brother. You are live on Bless Radio. How would you like to contribute to the discussion? You're live on Bless Radio. Yes, warmest greetings to you, my brother. Warmest greetings to you. How would you like to contribute to the discussion? Yes, yes, I did. I did. And would you like to make a contribution there, my brother? Yes, okay, please go ahead. I've heard that point, definitely. And your second point, my brother? Okay. Right, I hear you, my brother. I hear you. So that's your second point. That's your second point. Let's go with your third point, and then we can discuss them a bit if you want to. Right. So let me see if I've understood you, my brother. Get rid of Islam and Christianity is your first point. Is that right? Yeah. And your second point was about the mindset. Can you just very briefly say that one again? Oh, the line cut there. Please ring back my brother. I want you to make your point. So, right, okay, I think our brother's ringing back. Yes, warmest greetings to you, my brother. I'm not sure what happened there. The line seemed to cut. But please, you were explaining the mindset point, the second point.
Yeah, but the mindset, yeah, because right now, like I said, many Africans, I think about content, right? I've got a mindset of national project. It's all about one thing, you know? And it's the way it's developed of like, you know, how can you start the mindset, right? So, right? And what about something concerning future generation? Yeah? And that's because the mind is geared for short-term thinking, short-term game, not for long-term thinking, long-term game.
Okay. So that's the second point. And the third point was to get rid of non-Africans. Now, I want to just take a step back, my brother, and I just want to interact with you. Yeah. Now, tell me, what is your plan? You say that you want to get rid of Islam and Christianity. What is your plan for achieving that? How are you going to do that, my brother?
Well, because one thing that we have to do is, quote unquote, well, not correct, but establish our own African institutions. Because right now, the system of education, the system of education that we have in the country is giving Eurocentric or Arabic in its orientation, right? And that's definitely employing towards agendas. So we have to, educate our young people, right? The essence of African culture and recommend sort of by having our own African culture.
Yeah, I understand the point about promoting something, so promoting African spirituality, but your point was to actually get rid of Islam and Christianity, and I'm asking you how you would actually do that, my brother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a big right? Those of our schools now, like, the elders, right? You hold it out, when they start coming to talk about, the young people are coming up now, the 3, 4, 5-year-olds, that's fun. So that in another 20 years, right, they would not see Islam and Christianity as being their spiritual template. They will also see African spirituality as their template. And also, if we have to accept everything, we must operate on the African spiritual template, not on the template that will come from
Yeah, again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at your process. I'm hearing your point. Yeah. But how would that happen? So look, here's a question I'm going to put to you. Yeah, I want you to imagine I'm a Christian. Yeah, and I want you to imagine I have children, and you come and say, right, okay, I know you're a Christian. You're an old man. I can't change you, but I'm going to put your children. I'm going to take your children. I'm going to put them in an African spiritual school. How would you persuade me to allow you to do that? No, yeah, I'm also wondering. I'm trying to deal with the nuts and bolts of how to solve this problem. Yeah, you've identified what you see as a problem. Yeah, now, an African who worships through Islam or worships through Christianity remains an African nonetheless. And they will no doubt say, I'm an African, what are you talking about? Yes, I worship, Islam or I worship Christianity, but I'm an African, and my children will be African if they worship in the same faith as me. What do you have to say to an African who responds in that way?
You know, I think that, like, you know, which is your concept, right, of religion is not African, right, and what you are engaged in is actually alien to your original culture, you know, because, like I said, if we have to end this, we have to emancipate ourselves from God, because God doesn't come from God, and on what is the custom of the Messiah, and this is why God is that way, because we're not following our own deity, we are worshiping and a foreign deity that is given to our being the African people.
So I'm hearing your analysis, brother. Brother, I'm hearing your analysis, but I'm not asking you about your analysis. I'm asking you about the how. So here I am Christian or I'm Muslim, and that is my mindset. Yeah, I'm African. Now, I'm putting myself in that position, and I imagine I'm not going to allow you to take my children and put them in an African spirituality school. If I'm a Muslim, I want them in a Muslim school. If I'm a Christian, I want them in a Christian school. How are you going to, take my children and put them in a school that I don't want them to be in?
I understand the question that you raised before. The fundamental point is that, you know, like I said, these things are about how to and the concept of what, and it's amazing because I love on a low person concept of the creator, and it is very, very difficult to change that mindset. Like I said, but because we have an African concept that works for all of us, because the concept of who we see as the creator, how we live that. It's because of the church, it's all of faith. And like I said, faith is the reason why we are where we are.
You see,
and it wasn't by that when the Arabs when the West they took off spirituality, put in their spirituality, maybe it's about spirituality. They took our name and gave us Arab names like Khan, like Rashid, like Umar, like Habib, etc. And then the Western gave us their names and Johnson, Brown. That was not my accident, it was my design.
Now I hear another line going. I think somebody maybe likes or dislikes the point that you're making, brother. But you see, what I understand the point that you're making actually. Yeah, I'm not saying that I agree with the point that you're making, but I understand the point you're making. It's regularly made. I'm trying to deal with the mechanics of how that happens. And the reason why I'm putting that to you is because if you believe what you say is correct, and I don't doubt that you do, but then the next stage is, how do you make it happen? That's the next stage. But now, we have people among ancestors who have looked at this problem. Marcus Garvey looked at this problem, for instance. If we read the work of Marcus Garvey, he looked at this problem. The Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah looked at this problem. And one of the things that Garvey says, for instance, is that you cannot change the religion. You shouldn't try to change the religion of a person because it inculcated within them.
Yeah, and the same way he was inculcated them, the same way we can inculcate out of them.
Well, this was the how I was asking you. How do you do that? Because slavery was used to get our traditional ways out of us. So how are we going to get the ways that you dislike out of our sisters and brothers who are in those religions? We know that it was taken out of us because slavery was used, all kind of wickedness was used. But how are we going to do it?
This is what I'm saying, by persuasion or whatever.
Yeah, but I want you to imagine, I'm a Christian. I'm not persuaded by your argument. How are you going to take my children? And if you go and take my children, I'm going to fight you.
Well, fine. Well, fine. But I know that's the behind it. But like I said, that program is so different that a lot of the things that what we're worshiping actually are our own. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality and the way of life. And so many Africans get confused. So you may be a Christian, right? But that's not your spirituality, that's not your way of life. So I do understand the point that you're making. Like I said, it would take a long time, right, to actually get our people out of that mindset and thinking towards African spirituality because of the psychological damage of Arab slavery and European slavery. So I do appreciate the question that you put at me, you posed at me, and then in my assessment, that's success. But it is what it is. But like I said, I truly believe, right, but if they're going to build Africa of the future, right, it has to be devoid of Islam and Christianity. Because right now, if you look at what's happening in northern Nigeria, you look at what's happening in Sudan, you look at what's happening in large parts of the country. A lot of it is because of a spiritual ideology that's been put inside of us by other people.
Okay, and there are many Africans who would disagree with you. At the same time, I understand the point you're making, my brother. I want to thank you for ringing in because we've gone past the hour now. I really appreciate your call and for you to share your opinion with us. Is there a brief concluding comment, one sentence or something that you'd just like to make as we move towards signing off?
Yeah, I believe that the content has a future, which is a natural forward relevant because one cannot say that people have a future, but the type of future that we build for ourselves and our children and their children needs to be predicated on us as the re-waking of ourselves, who we are, right, as a people, right, and also the ideology and the mindset that is needed in order to sustain and build the Africa that we cannot be proud of.
My brother, I want to thank you for your contribution this evening. Thank you very much for ringing, and maybe we can have another conversation next week. Love and respect to you, my brother. So we thank our brother for his... Yes, take care, my brother, take care. So we thank our brother for his contribution. We have gone over the time, I think, and so I must now draw the program to a close. Let me say, I'll just finish off by saying that the prospects for the future are good. The demographic figures show that by the end of this century, 1 in 2 children born in this world, or 1 in 2 children between the age of 0 and 5, will be African. In other words, we are going to be the majority population of the world, as large as all the rest of the world put together. That is going to change the balance completely. Understand that with an average age of 18, which is where we are at the moment, we've got an average age of 18 of African people on the continent. This is the child-making period, between 18 and 30. This is when human beings of that age make new people during that period. So we are now 1.6 billion of us in that period where we are going to create more people. And as we create more people, our people will be our salvation. Because our people will produce the genius that will solve our problem. It is African people who are going to solve our problem. In a nutshell, the more we have, the more successful we will be. So let me just sign off with a little music. to bring the program to a close. And let me just say thank you to everybody who took time to listen to the program this week, and those of you that rang in, I really appreciate your calls and your contributions. Let me say that next week, you will at this time have our brother Astamari. So our brother Astamari will be organizing the program from 10 until midnight next week. So that's something to look forward to. And I look forward to hearing your program next week, my brother. Love and respect to you. Next slide.